Ooh, yeah. Okay, let's get this party started. In the middle of Snowpocalypse 2019. Just double check, make sure you can see that. That is heating up. And let me go grab some coconut oil. And something to go there. That in a big bowl to put all the cut up chicken in. So we're going to be prepping a bunch of chicken for meal prep for the week. And that's awesome. The idea is to basically get all this chicken cut up into single, roughly 4-ounce portions, and pre-cook it in the Foreman grill, and then vacuum seal it with the vacuum sealer. Put it in the freezer so that during the week, all I need to do is pop the chicken out, throw it in the microwave for a minute or two to heat it up and to de-thaw it, and easy as that during the week. So if you cook it all at once with the grill, you only have to clean the grill once. You only have to do all the meal prep once. Everything else becomes, you know, cutting a corner off the package with the pair of scissors and microwaving it. So we're good to go with that. And I have a bowl here. I'm going to be first prepping a bunch of chicken to like that, so we can see everything. And the idea is to prep all the chicken. I'm going to be using some teriyaki marinade because my son likes teriyaki chicken, so that he'll eat some of this as well. And we'll just go from there. So go ahead and open up the chicken. There's that. Alright, and I probably should get another bowl to put the scraps of pieces of chicken that I'm not going to be cooking. And start with this piece here. Just trimming the excess parts off because I'm super picky about gristle and everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, excuse me, prepare maybe a quarter to a third of this chicken, let it marinate with the teriyaki marinade, and then I will move on and just cook the rest of the chicken plain, so to speak, chicken flavored. So and again, I'm just separating these pieces into basically just two halves. Probably should remove that piece there. And I know this is fine to eat and everything, it's just a personal preference. There's that. There's that. And I will do 3 pieces like this, and I'll let them marinate while I'm cooking the rest of the chicken. And if you do this, another benefit to prepping the chicken like this and doing it all at once is that you can buy the less expensive cuts of chicken. I know typically during the week I don't really like to spend a lot of time, you know, cutting up chicken and cleaning the chicken and all this stuff, so I tend to buy the prepackaged chicken breasts that are you know, a little bit easier to mess with during the week. So and that one looks alright. And I'm sure there's a much better way to do this technique-wise, but I am not classically trained in the arts of cutting up meat. So I'll do one more, I guess, because I like teriyaki chicken too, so might as well. Make plenty of that. These are all going to be individual servings and vacuum sealed and frozen individually, so there's no issue of getting a bunch of like meat that's large servings to the point where you're going to cook it and some of it's going to go to waste. Each of these individual pieces are going to be cooked and then sealed individually. That's a mistake I made with the cheeseburgers that I made, because I cooked 2 of them at a time, or I cooked them all at once, but I vacuum sealed and froze them 2 at a time, which is fine. Generally speaking, we end up eating 2 of them at once, but there's a couple of times where I just wanted to have one burger and not reheat both of the patties. So I think in the future I'm just going to do individual servings, and then we can work from there. Be picking on my technique with a knife here, but that's fine. All right. I feel like I need a hacksaw here. There's that. Okay. I'm going to set that down, and I'm going to go wash my hands. I'll be right back. Always important to make sure you're practicing best practices when it comes to handling raw chicken. A lot of times if anybody gets sick from handling chicken, it tends to be because they didn't think to wash their hands between, like what I'm doing here, handling the marinade bottles and things like that. So what I'm going to do is, wow, hand's still wet. Okay. And apply the marinade. I'm going to toss this around a little bit just to make sure that everything's covered. Yeah, why not? We'll just use the whole thing. And since it's the reason for doing this first is that it will allow this to sit in the marinade while I'm doing everything else. Normally you would want to do something like this overnight, but wanting to do this on stream with everybody is kind of pressing my hand. So I'm going to just let this marinate for the half hour or so it will probably take me to cook everything. And then, the marinade actually smells really good. And then once that's done, I will cook this up as well with the, I'm not going to be washing the chicken, washing the marinade off. It'll just be going right on the electric grill like this. And I'm going to try and get as much of this submerged as possible, because I don't really want to toss this a bunch more times. But I'll set that like that. Just move that off onto the side. And these pieces I am going to be applying directly to the grill. Make sure that will open up. And it will. Adjust that down so that everybody can see. Alright. So I'm going to trim this up first. Trim up at least the first couple of portions. And then I can prep the other one while this one's cooking. Trying to do a minimal amount of bouncing back and forth as far as doing things that you have to handle the raw chicken versus things that are finished cooking. So you don't want to like cook some of it, go back to prepping it, take it off, go back to prepping more, because it just introduces more chances. I need to stop waving that around, but it introduces more chance of contamination with the raw chicken. So, and if you're going to be handling a large amount of this as well, it's a good idea to have some form of counter cleaner or anything if you're going to be handling this, which I do, to basically kill any of the bacteria that are often present on raw chicken. So, like I said, if you're practicing, safe handling practices of raw meat, then you should be fine, and it's nothing to worry about. It's all about just minimizing exposure. Pretty much the same thing in anything in life that you can deal with potentially hazardous things. Alright. There's that. And again, I'm going to prep all this right up front. Then I am going to go wash my hands, and then it will be all cooking from there out, and I will just use the tongs to handle the chicken. So, if anybody can hear any background noise, it's my son playing online in his room. But don't fall off the cutting board. There's that. We'll just stack it. One more. So yeah, this chicken that I bought it was under $2 a pound, just right around $2 a pound exactly, $1.99 or so. And like I said, if you get the chicken that's not all prepped and already cut up, you can buy a lot of it and save yourself a couple of dollars. It's not such a big deal if you're only getting, a pound of chicken. It ends up being $1 or $2 and not a big deal. But if you're doing something like this where you're prepping, and cooking 6 pounds of chicken, then it makes a difference. This would have probably been almost double if this had all been pre-cut and sealed and ready for individual servings, which that's the price you pay for convenience. But I'm sure everybody has pretty much come across that at some point in their life. And some combination of snow and sleet and freezing rain, so I didn't really feel like going out. I just felt like getting this ready and then watching the football game later. So if anybody's worried that watching this is going to run into the game, don't worry about it, because I'm not missing the game. So if you watch this, you won't be missing it because of me either. So I'm going to go ahead and just finishing this. I'm getting a little nitpicky here. It's not a big deal, but that's the last piece, so taking an extra second. Alright. Alright, last piece there. Okay, and I'll just set this there. And actually I'll take this over and wash my hands. And wash the knife, put it away. And be careful not to touch your faucet knobs, things like that with your hands when they're covered in raw chicken. And again, often I'm not a huge fan of using a ton amount of antibacterial stuff because I think it builds up immunity for our systems, or not just for us, but for the bacteria themselves. But there are some circumstances, such as handling raw chicken, that I would recommend doing it. So, that up to dry in the rack. And probably should have grabbed my other pair of tongs, and they're right here. Okay, so, alright, and I'm going to apply some coconut oil to the grill. This is obviously a ceramic griddle. It's probably, you could consider it a grill because of the lines. This is more for ease of cleanup than the chicken actually sticking to it. Alright, and you don't want to put this on way ahead of time because I'm cooking with a fairly high amount of heat, and it will cause that coconut oil to get dark and start to burn. So, and I should be able to fit most of this on one pass here. Yeah. Missing one piece, but so maybe I was a little, probably got to make sure that that actually cooks. Tuck that in. As this heats up, it's going to shrink, just because that's what meat does, so this will all work better in a bit. I'm going to go ahead and close those up and set them there. And since I didn't actually touch the chicken with my bare hands because of the tongs, I can get a little bit of some garlic salt, or garlic powder I should say, not garlic salt, to season. And let's go with some black pepper. A little more. It's not a huge amount of black pepper. It's just that it comes out difficult. And some pink Himalayan salt. Alright. Put that there. And close this up. Alright. And I'm not going to move that back, but I will go ahead and that paper towel. Put all this chicken in here. I'm going to try and, again, you're limiting your contact with the chicken. It's not toxic or anything. Obviously, you're going to eat it later, but it's more, like I said, just to keep down the amount of bacteria and stuff. And I'm going to wash my hands anyways, but alright. That in the plastic bag. And put this whole thing in the trash, which I'm going to be taking out in a minute. There's that, and I'll go wash my hands. This chicken's going to take a few minutes, so there's no rush. I thinned it up quite a bit, but there's still quite a bit of thickness to it. And it may require some moving around due to my imperfect knife skills. Alright. There's that. I'm going to let that go for some more. And I'll just take care of these for now. Set that there, set that there. And I have this super shiny tray to put the chicken on as it's cooked. I'm going to check and see if it's, yeah, that's just barely cooking. So that's going to have a few minutes. So take advantage of that time to, oop, that worked well. Turn this chicken over a little bit. And you can see the marinade's starting to stick in a little bit already. Obviously you want to take your time turning this around because you don't want it to splash out. Because even though it's, you may think of it as just marinade, it's also, ooh, that almost escaped. It's also raw chicken, so you definitely want to be careful with it. Again, not that this is anything really scary to worry about, it's more of a making less work for yourself to pick up after later on. So, and this is just moving it around in case there are any portions of the chicken that were touching the glass and that the marinade wasn't able to make contact with. So again, punch it down to the bottom as much as you can to keep it submerged. Call that good. Alright. There's that. Back out of the way. Get that ready. I am going to go move these over and set them in the sink and wash these tongs because I'm going to need something to get the chicken off of the grill. Set that in there. Run some hot water over it. The magic of live cooking. Jeremy wants to do my dishes, partially. Alright. Dry that off. Alright. So we'll set those there so that we can use them in a minute. And while I have a minute, I'm just going to go ahead and I'll go over the process for vacuum sealing it. Buy this vacuum seal roll, basically a vacuum sealing paper. Not really paper, it's plastic. But that way you can use scissors to roll out. Might as well go ahead and unstick this now. And I get this just at Walmart. The vacuum sealer, obviously, got online. This is just, and you want to get the stuff that has the, I don't know if you can see it. There you go. The lines in it. The little recessed lines. That allows air to escape around your food. And with this, you can, instead of the bags, you can actually cut the vacuum sealing plastic to whatever size you need. So I like this better than the bags for that reason. And I know a lot of people will vacuum seal raw meat so that they can cook it later, which is definitely fine. It keeps it from getting freezer burnt. This is a slight variation in that, where I pre-cook the chicken so that, because it's more of a time-saving measure for later on in the week, like on a Monday night or a Tuesday night, you feel like you want some teriyaki chicken with, you know, if my son might want it with macaroni and cheese or something else on the side, mashed potatoes and gravy. And if I want it with, you know, cauliflower or whatever I'm going to have it with, then you can just pop it in the microwave. Or if I'm away at work or whatever, getting home late, he can just snip the corner off a package with some scissors, he's 17, and pop it in the microwave and be done. And it's actual food. It's not a frozen dinner, you know, that he's popping into the... So it's getting there a little bit. I'm still going to let it cook a little more. Looks like everything's kind of shrinking into the pan. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'll just let it go like that. We'll go some more. The good thing with like a Foreman grill is that it will cut down on the amount of time it takes to cook this because it's cooking on both sides. So that's a good thing. And it makes it less boring, so I'm not standing here telling you stories the whole time. So while we wait for this to cook. All right. So the football game, if you've been living under a rock for the last week, I live in Maine, so our team is the Patriots. I know, not a popular team, but we're fans of them. So let me just actually, you know what? Hold on just a moment. Let me turn this down. Apparently my voice has been really loud. There, that should be better. Yeah. Okay. So, and everybody's kind of waiting for the Patriots to lose against the Chiefs today. So, we're going to see how it goes. Hopefully it's a good game, either way. But I would like to see the Patriots win. And sometimes you will want to flip the chicken in one of these grills and you'll get to learn this after you use your grill. This isn't anything special. This was purchased at Walmart, I believe, a year or so back. But the different plates, sometimes they do heat different temperatures. So if you just let it cook all the way through, it will overcook on one side and undercook on the other sometimes. But some of them do a really good job of staying more consistent. I'll move this up. And these don't have to be beautiful. Yeah, see, that's what I mean right there. I'm going to show you. I just flipped this piece over. And you can see right on the bottom here that this side, if I can get a hold of it, this side doesn't have the grill marks on it, and this side is starting to. So it's definitely cooking it more unevenly than I would like. And some of that is just the varying thickness doesn't allow it to touch. Well, I would say that if it was on the top, but where that's on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and flip everything. And also use that as an opportunity to apply some more seasoning. Rotate that around. Yeah, we'll just do it this way. There. And this should help keep everything. If I can hang on to my garlic powder. That on there. Salt. And the black pepper. Alright, I'll close this back up. Let it go for... And you can hear the change in the sound when the top grill touches. Apparently the top grill on this one is warmer than the bottom, gets more hot, so it's definitely a good idea that I flipped the chicken. This isn't necessarily the one I use all the time. This one is much easier, and there's also one benefit to this, which I would definitely, if you're going to get one of these, which is a very good idea if you do a lot of countertop cooking like this, meaning not using your oven or range, using countertop appliances. One thing you definitely want to keep in mind when you're buying one of these electric grills is to get one that, and you can see it here, these releases, both here and on the other side. These allow you to remove the plates. You push in on these two buttons, and obviously once it's cooled off, don't do it now. But and it will allow you to release those grills, the actual plates themselves, and take them over to your sink and just clean them off. Like I use one of those, not a Brillo pad, but like an SOS pad on a wand with the the dish detergent in the handle, just because it's super easy and quick. And I'm a big fan of that if you've seen me cook at all before. But that way you can just take these out, just wipe down the edges and stuff, because there's going to be some places where, you know, like fat and seasoning and stuff like that gets on the plastic surrounds and stuff. But the main cooking surface, you can take them into the sink and just scrub them and get everything off. Obviously prepping it with the coconut oil before we applied, it's going to make it easier to clean that off. Plus it's ceramic coated, so that'll make it very easy as well. But if you've ever used one of these that the plates don't come out on, it's awful. You end up like holding it halfway up above your sink and like running water over it and scrubbing it, trying to keep the water from getting into the electronic part of it. It's not cool. It's not fun. So definitely get one that has removable plates. Some of them with the removable plates, you can get ones that have the grill lines and also have flat surfaces. Some of them lay flat, and you can open it up and use it both sides. Those are really nice. I think I bought this one, or I got it as a gift before those came out. So if I have to get another one, I'm definitely going to get one because I do use it a lot. You know, I cook the hamburgers that I talked about prepping and that I've frozen a bunch of. I cook those on it. Basically, if I'm cooking any meat, and it's not anything that needs to sit in a sauce while I'm cooking it, it goes in one of these. I have a couple of them. I have a smaller one, which I don't really use too often because I've gotten around to cooking more this way, where I make a lot of something, freeze it, and then I don't have to cook it again for a couple of weeks. I'm a big fan of the whole work smarter, not harder philosophy. Some people call that being lazy. Whatever works. So, pretty much done with the... Once you apply the oil the first time, where this is a non-stick surface, you really should only apply it the first time. But if you have issues with stuff sticking, you know, go ahead and use it again. It's there. It's not a huge increase in fat or calories if you're only using a spray. Like I said, it's different if you're submerging things in oil, or you know, if you're sautéing stuff in a pan on a range top, because all the fluids tend to just drain right out of the meat on this. And there's a large catch tray at the bottom that will just catch everything. And obviously, nobody wants to eat medium rare chicken, so make sure your chicken is cooked. I should probably grab a knife too, since we're getting close to having that. Get a small knife. And let's look. Yeah, it's getting there. And it's going to look ready on the outside for a little while before it's really done. So I'm going to go ahead and close it back up and let this finish. Let me give this another turn. And again, like I said, I tend to want to marinate things overnight just because I like to I like to be sure that it's going to absorb a lot of the flavoring. of the marinade, or else what's the point? But wanting to do this all at once on stream with everybody makes it worth doing it this way. And again, the marinade's not going to, these aren't sponges. They're pieces of chicken, so it's not a, you're not going to notice a ton of marinade disappearing. It's more of the flavor kind of soaking into the meat, into the tiny lines in the meat. It's not going to sink. And eventually you can let things marinate to the point where they will sink all the way in. This is more of a quick kind of surface marinade, which, again, less effective than letting it sit in the fridge overnight in a Ziploc bag. Typically, if you get a large gallon Ziploc bag, trim up the chicken, put all the pieces into a bag. Again, trying not to touch the edges of it with your hands if you've touched the raw chicken. And just dump the marinade right in, squeeze the air out of it, seal it up, put it in the fridge overnight, and then the next day, when you're ready to cook, break it out and cook it up. So, and there's definitely, and like I said in the last stream, there's definitely a benefit to having this, doing it in this way, because you can buy chicken in bulk at places like Sam's Club or Walmart or just your grocery store, your local one. Usually you can get chicken for around $2 a pound, whereas if you get it all pre-trimmed and everything, you're saving yourself 5 minutes worth of work for, it ends up being twice as much sometimes. And it's, like I said, it's not a big deal if you're doing like a couple breasts of chicken or whatever, but normally you're going to buy a couple pounds of chicken and do it this way, and that way if you freeze it and prep it, then you can have, that ends up tasting pretty fresh. You're not going to cut a large hole when you microwave it. You want to cut a hole no bigger around than your pinky in the corner of the bag, so that it still kind of seals in a lot of the juices of the meat when you're microwaving it, so that it doesn't allow it to dry out. But if you cook it that way, it's not as big a deal as, the chicken that you buy in a big bag that's already frozen. And they're like, oh, it's ice crusted. Well, it's ice crusted because they're selling you the ice at the price of the chicken per pound. So you're much better off. This is probably a pound of water that's frozen onto the outside of the ice. They do that to help cut down on the amount of freezer burn, because this chicken can be sitting in a freezer at your grocery store for a while. I definitely recommend, if you have a vacuum sealer and you have the $100 worth of equipment, as far as the electric grill, vacuum sealer, some bags, and a freezer to put them in with empty space, it's definitely better to just buy the fresh chicken, cook it all up, stick it in the freezer, and then it saves you having to defrost the chicken, in the microwave or whatever, and then cook it, in the manner of whatever way you want to choose. The only time that's ever not a big deal is if you're making a stew or something like that. But even then, you still have to generally cut up the chicken into cubes, things like that. So it's definitely not ideal. And if you buy a large enough package of chicken, it's also not going to be very large of a difference in price to buy the fresh chicken. So we're going to go ahead and check this again. And looks just about done. So I'm going to grab a piece. Let's see, we'll get the thickest piece right here. And we're going to put that there. And I will slice into this to see. Yep. You don't want any, I don't know if you can really see that there, even with a zoomed in view, but you don't want any pink. Like I said, nobody wants medium rare. chicken. So I'm going to go ahead and just get the rest of these out. Generally speaking, once you've cooked all of the pinkness out of the center of the chicken, there's not really a lot of benefit to cooking it further. You know, there will be purists that'll want you to make sure that, you know, get a meat thermometer, and definitely if you're at all worried that you're cooking the chicken appropriate temperatures, go ahead and do that, just for peace of mind. But generally speaking, the temperature at which the chicken will turn white and lose that pinkness out of the center is a good indication of that it's done. So there's that section there. I'm just going to set this off to the side and let that go. And I probably should empty that out. You'll see when you're cooking sometimes this drip tray here gets very full. So if you're cooking a large amount of chicken, you're going to want to empty that out because you don't want that to overflow. So I'm going to go ahead and take this to the sink. And be very careful. Generally, you could even keep that bowl back here to use that to empty it into. And this is just the drippings from the chicken. That rinse it out with hot water. Again, you're going to use it some more, so it's not like you're cleaning it to put it away. You're just trying to not have it be gross to handle. So I'm going to hurry up and do this, the rest of this chicken, because I want to vacuum seal everything while it's still fairly warm to lock in all the moisture, because that's what's going to make it be good to eat during the week. You don't want it to be dry. Dry chicken is very gross. So again, I'm not going to wring off any of this. Some people will. And just apply the chicken right there. And the reason I'm not wiping off the chicken, some people will wipe off the marinade. I'm not going to, simply because this didn't sit for very long in the marinade. So this will add a little bit more flavoring. And I'm going to move this all over a little bit more. Just in the hopes that I can fit all of these pieces on here. And I think this piece is smaller. Maybe. And again, this will, like I said in the last batch, this will shrink. There. Go ahead and close those up, slide them off out of the way. See, they all kind of fit on there. And that's always loud when you first do it. And I'll just set this off. I'll take care of this, the last thing. Ideally, I would start vacuum sealing everything of this chicken that's done right now as this is cooking, but this is also something you want to keep in mind when you're, cooking with countertop outlets and things like that, appliances, is the amount of wattage that you can run through a certain outlet. Generally speaking, it varies roughly between 1500 to 1600, which is 1500 to 1600 watts. And it's not just that it's all 110 and it's fine. There's amount of how much you can run off one outlet. And if you exceed that, it will cause your circuit breakers to trip, or if you're in an older house, the fuses to blow, just simply because it thinks there's an issue with the wiring, which technically there is, because you're trying to push too much through the circuit. So I'm not 100% certain how much juice the electric motor on the vacuum sealer and the heating element draws. So just to be safe, I'm not going to be doing that while this is both. I have an electrical strip underneath, mounted underneath the counter to keep it out of moisture, out of liquid. If anything comes off the side of the counter, it won't get into the electrical outlets because it's mounted way up underneath. So in an effort to not overload that strip, I'm going to just, you know, do the smart patient thing and not overload it. So. And generally speaking, if you're putting, you know, if you're cooking something with a marinade on it or a sauce, you're going to want to let it cook a little bit longer than you might bare chicken. Things have a tendency to stick while they're not 100% cooked through. It's less likely to stick to the surfaces if you let it cook to the point where it starts to firm up that sauce on the outside of it, starts to glaze up a little bit, and then it makes it easier to remove off from the grill. And plus, where I put it right on after, there's still steam coming off this chicken here, so we should be fine. Got my seasoning in there. So hopefully everybody's safe if you're in the Northeast or in the path of the storm, that you didn't have to go to work or anything like that. I know everybody's like, oh, stay off the roads, it's not worth it, but you know, not paying your bills isn't worth it either. So I understand why people would push themselves to drive if they feel they have to. And I'm definitely not one to judge on that account, but hopefully everybody's staying safe. Because it's definitely not worth it if you don't make it somewhere and you get stuck. It's here in Maine, it's, I think, last time I checked it was 5 degrees, and the wind is blowing a lot harder than it is now, so I feel like the storm's kind of winding down, and I'll probably have to go shovel my car out here after the game. But hey Google, what's the temperature outside?
The current temperature in Newport is 4 degrees.
Yeah, it's still 4 degrees out, so definitely not fun weather to be outside. And 4 degrees in Maine is not a huge deal, you know, but it's more of it's 4 degrees and this blowing 20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour winds. That's when you generally don't want to be outside if you don't have to be. And where I live in town, you know, usually we have less of a to worry about, and I say that and the wind picks up, but generally speaking, we have less issues with power outages and things like that since there's a lot of businesses around. But it's still not, you still, you know, worry about family and everything that are out in the elements or out, you know, in less populated areas with the tree branches that come down on wires and things like that. You know, generally speaking, everybody's going to be safe, but you know, it gets cold, and you worry about pipes freezing and things like that. So it's not fun, and definitely don't want anybody to have to deal with anything that they don't. So it's getting there. I'm going to cook this for a couple more minutes on this, and then tilt that down a little bit. So close that up, let it cook a little more, and then I'll flip them. And we will move on to phase 2, the vacuum sealing. And like I said, ideally, I probably should have just done all the chicken one way so that I could have just cooked it all at once, but it's really not a big time delay between when I cook the regular chicken, just seasoned with spices, salt and pepper, to where I'm cooking with the marinade, so it's not a huge time delay. This chicken's really not going to get cold. Yeah, it's still warm, so as long as it's warm, the sooner you can get it into the vacuum sealing bags, the better. it's more important to get it sealed than it is to get it right into the freezer. Obviously, if it's going to be out on the counter for an extended period of time, you don't want that, even if it's cooked, because it will start to go bad, and there will be more issues with bacteria and things like that. But if you get it sealed in the vacuum seal bags, it's less of an issue. I'll give this like another minute, and then I'll flip it. We'll cook it the rest of the way through, and then I'll probably just unhook this grill, because it has kind of a switch where you can adjust the temperature. It doesn't have an on-off switch, so it's not an exact science, so to speak. I'm going to just unplug this, slide it off to the side, open it up, and then I'll start using the vacuum sealer. Because it's a power issue, it's not an issue with space or anything like that. But I can actually get everything set up in the meantime while I'm waiting. This is moisture from the drip tray. A lot of this is water, some of it's obviously fat from the chicken. And you want to make sure that this is slid up right underneath. And I can go back a slight amount there. Again, the more you clean during the process, the less you have to mess with later. You know what? I'm going to leave this unplugged just because I don't know if that heating element, and you can even tell like the lights light up on the, and they'll go out in a second. See? Because there are capacitors inside of the vacuum sealing unit that store up power. It's mostly for the heating element. The pump can just be turned off or on, but the heating element needs a more steady source of current. So all right. Let's look at the chicken. See, now it's darkened on the one side. So let's go ahead and flip this. Yeah, that's going to slide right off. Oh. Ow. Alright. And again, this chicken's mostly cooked, so it's not so much of an issue with the bacteria that I've been harping on the whole time. That's, it's obviously reached the temperature to kill most of the bacteria. This is just making sure that the meat is cooked all the way through without me slamming my arm into the camera. And again, once this meat contracts as it's cooked, you get a little bit more wiggle room as far as spacing on the griddle. Alright. Oops, stay. Close this back up. I push it just to make sure it settles. It's obviously not going to make a huge amount of difference. The weight of the griddle will, press everything together so that it makes good contact. It's not like making a grilled cheese or a burger when you want to press down on it. But and it shouldn't be much longer, and this will be done, and then we can get this all set. I'm going to go ahead and just stick this onto the counter. That was the little tab that holds the roll seat closed, just so that I can reuse it later on. Just put it there. I'll move these all over the... I'm going to just move this out of the way so that I can check one of the pieces of chicken. Generally speaking, you just grab the thickest piece of chicken and cut into that and make sure it's cooked all the way through, because, you know, 99% of the time, the thickest piece of chicken is going to cook the slowest. So if you check the thickest piece of chicken to make sure that that's cooked all the way through, the rest of the chicken is going to be cooked all the way through as well. Again, more obvious things people probably already know, but since I'm here and I have time to kill. And let's see how we're doing for time. Hey Google, what time is it?
The time is 3:11.
Oh, plenty of time. Game doesn't come on until 6, so not at all worried about it. Oh wow. I am going to do this. We're going to slide that back. And again, this isn't something that you want to do, try to make a habit of, but a lot of the juices are filling up this drip tray. So let's look and see how we're doing. Should be okay. It was just the drip tray was getting really close. I was going to empty it into this, but I think we'll be okay. We'll just set this off out of the way so don't knock it over. Alright, so let's see how we're doing here. This looks like it's the least cooked piece. So, this one right here. So we're going to go with that. We'll grab that, set it right on this. Again, this is cooked most of the way. We're just checking to make sure it's completely done. And that looks like it's done all the way. So, as I said before, and you can see how full that drip tray is there. But, as I said before, I'm just going to go ahead and unhook this and allow that to cool off. Yeah, we should be good. And if you're asking why I sliced into the chicken at a diagonal, it's so that, you know, if you cut through straight down, the chicken has a tendency to just pull apart, especially when it's, you know, once it's cooked and everything. If you slice it more like that, you can get deeper into the chicken, and you're not going as deep through the center of it. You can get a better look at it. You know, you can open it up and you can see more of the chicken because there's more surface area. So that's why I did that. Okay. Now, since that's going to go back on there, now let's go ahead and get started with the vacuum sealing. Alright, I'm going to move this back as much as I can. Move this out so everybody can see what I'm doing here. And for those of you that haven't used a vacuum sealer before, basically there's a couple of different ways you can go about it. You can get the rolls which are sealed on both sides, but they're not sealed obviously on the ends, because you can cut however big you need of a pouch. You can also get bags which are sealed on one end and they're a fixed size, or I mean, suppose you could trim off the other end and stick them in, but that's really the only difference. Generally speaking, the rolls are less expensive for the same amount of material, and I like having control over how large of a vacuum seal container I make. So what you do is, guess, and you want to give yourself a good 2 inches before the food starts. So I'm going to go roughly, we'll slide this back a little bit. I'm going to go roughly, 2 of these lines, and just cut straight across like that. Set that by, and then what you do is there are two steps to vacuum sealing anything. And what you do is if I can stop hitting the button, you open it up, and I'll turn it around here so everybody can see a little bit better. There's this copper is the heating element. See the warning, caution, hot service. I don't know if you can see it that far away, but basically the steps of this process are, there's this chamber right here. This has a felt surround, and this is I'm guessing a butyl rubber support right there. You want to take, when you're originally sealing it, you don't want to have a ton of overhang, so you want to set your plastic, make sure that it's entirely on that rubber, because what that rubber does is that's where that heating element's going to contact. You don't need to put it into this vacuum chamber because you're not applying vacuum yet. You're just applying the heat. So you want to close it up like this, push it down till it clicks, push the seal button, and it got unplugged. Wait for the lights to come back on. Push the seal button, you'll see it light up. And once that goes out, it means that the sealing is complete. Like so. Push the buttons on the side, release it. And you can see, try to find a way to, so you can see that line right there. That tells you that it's been sealed. And if you open it up, you can tell that it's closed. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and hold that open like that. Grab one of these chicken breasts. Drop it down in. And again, you want to try to avoid getting much of the moisture from the chicken up here as possible, because you're going to want that to seal properly. You want to put and you can see this vacuum chamber here, you want the opening on the end of the bag to go into the center of that. And again, give yourself a couple of inches here so that this can lay flat, and it also keeps some of the moisture from being absorbed up through the chamber. These these sealing felts here are more to keep, and that's where these lines come in the bag. It presses and clamps down on it. It starts vacuuming the pressure into this chamber, which in turn, because this is held here by the rubber surround and the felt gaskets, ends up, sucking all the air out, and once it gets compacted down, it will start to draw it out slowly between those channels, the little squiggly channels that are going out, and once it reaches a certain pressure and vacuum, it continues to vacuum out the air in the bag, but it also engages the heating element, which keeps all the air sucked out and also seals it behind, kind of closes the door behind it, so to speak. So what you do is you make sure that that stays in there, close it down, and then you hit the vacuum seal button. And you can see the air being sucked out of it. And you'll see the light come on for the seal. That means that it's sealing it. And once the light goes out, you know it's done. And you can hear when you release this that it's not air going back into your packaging, because you can see this is very, you know, very tightly vacuumed out, all the air. It's very tightly sealed. That is releasing the pressure inside of this chamber here, because it stays sealed. I'm going to go ahead and mark these later, but I will right up with the roll. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and seal the rest of these. And again, like I said before, I'm sealing these individually so that, you know, we have more flexibility in cooking them. You can always take 2 bags and slit the corners off of them and set them in the microwave at once and do that if you want. So I had this mostly with 2 lines. I'm going to go a little bit further on that. And some of these vacuum sealers will have the rolls integrated into the sealer in the back in here, and you can just pull it out. Those are really handy. I would assume this one is fine. I don't really need so much that. I'd rather have more control over it, over the amount of the types of rolls I can use. So again, just make sure that it stays out of the, it doesn't have to go into the felt for the sealing stage. You just want to make sure it sits flat on that rubber and that it contacts all of that. Close it down, seal it, which essentially this is creating a, you know, a bag. So the light goes out. Notice you didn't hear the vacuum releasing on that one because it was just sealing that again. You can see it right there. So again, open it up, grab one of the chicken breasts, drop it down in, try to get it as deep as possible without touching the sides. And then lay the end of it into the vacuum chamber. I'll make sure that and if you do get something inside the bag that's touching up here where you're going to seal it, you can just wipe it out with your hand mostly. It doesn't have to be perfect to seal because the plastic will melt right through, but the better you can do at getting that clean. Hit the vacuum seal again. Alright. There's that. And the reason for vacuum sealing this, for anybody that's not familiar with it, is everybody's had things in the freezer that get freezer burnt. What causes freezer burn is it allows the moisture on the outside of the surface of whatever you're freezing to freeze, and it, you know, kind of breaks up the surface, and you get like this frosty, you know, dried out, frosty, gross taste. This basically prevents that. And you can keep things, especially pre-cooked meat that's frozen while it's still, you know, warm and everything, up to, you know, a year. Whereas if you buy chicken from the store that's frozen, pre-frozen, or even just, you know, take chicken, throw it in a Ziploc freezer bag and throw it in the freezer, it's going to be, you know, a month, couple weeks maybe. And then it starts to go bad. So I'm going to go ahead and do it right about there. And again, you want to try and cut this as straight as possible. A couple of these cuts of mine have not been perfect, but they're pretty close, so it's really all you need. It's just because you don't want to waste a ton of material hanging it out over, you know, the end. You want to be able to get this really close. And if you go online, this is the Gerion, I can't remember the model number, vacuum sealer, and you notice in the reviews online on these that a lot of people had issues with, or not a lot of people, but some people had issues with it not sealing, it not creating a good vacuum. The issue with that is they weren't closing it properly. You have to push it until it clicks, because that's how it's keeping everything closed. If you just set this down and just kind of push on it and it doesn't click, it's not really clamping it down, and it's going to vacuum the air out, and it's going to continue to light up that vacuum seal light. You know, it's going to light this up, and the pump's going to continue to run. It's never going to hit the seal because inside that vacuum chamber, it's never reaching the amount of, you know, negative pressure. So, and it's always a good thing to just take a quick look at it and make sure that it's sealed, which this one's fine. There's that. That in there. And another thing to keep in mind is I'm pretty sure you can't see it with this webcam at this distance, but maybe you can there. I'm trying to get it right. You can see some of the different coloration inside of the bag. Looks like liquid in it. And that's part of the why I let it rest, is because you will get some of that fluid that's pulled up through the bag, and that's also why they use this vacuum chamber rather than something that applies vacuum directly, because if any of that liquid is drawn out of the bag, like if you're, you know, if you try to vacuum seal, you know, chili or something like that, or soup, which there are vacuum sealers that can do that, you know, they have more of a wet function. There are obviously modes for gentle and normal. Gentle means just less vacuum, it's less compression on whatever you're putting inside the bag. Normal, I'm running this at normal because this is chicken. It's pretty resilient as far as, you know, what you can do with it. And there's also a moist and dry option, which also impacts the amount of suction that you're going to apply. I think that one, it affects the duration of how long it's vacuumed together. So I'll go ahead and set that up there and get the next one going. I should probably cut a couple of these out just so that I don't have to keep stopping. And I can get them all at the right length. Just set that down. I'll do these 3 and then cut another batch for. And it's important once you're cutting this, once you start cutting it, to not stop and start again. You keep forward pressure on it, because then you don't get weird jagged cuts on the end that might cause issues when you go to seal with it. So I'll set these off on the side. Set this one in to seal. You know, if that does end up happening, you can just obviously feed more of the bag into this before you seal it, because then you don't have to worry about, you know, some of those breaks coming back into the part where you're trying to seal it and causing an issue where it won't hold the seal. Or if you put the chicken in and it seals it and then it releases the pressure after it's sealed. And sometimes you'll get issues with, you know, certain types of this roll plastic, that if you get a wrinkle in it where like part of the plastic is together and then you press it down, you don't notice it, and you seal that, it's not going to seal properly. It'll look, at first it'll look fine, but you'll set it aside and get going on a few other things you want to do, and then you'll come back and look at it and be like, wow, that's not vacuumed out anymore. You know, it'll just kind of slowly let that pressure back in. So go ahead and stick this down in there. And again, some of these pieces are fairly small, but again, you can always throw more of them into the microwave if you want. Piece of chicken there. Make sure it's closed. And it also, on this one especially, if you push down when you push the buttons to release it, it causes less wear and tear on these tabs. There are two plastic tabs here that lock it down. And I did notice that a couple of people had issues with that. So this one here, I might end up wanting to reseal because it doesn't look like the seal held. I think that was because there was just too much liquid. You can tell the amount of movement that you can get in the plastic. You shouldn't be able to do that. Like with this one I just sealed. You know, it's tight. This isn't tight, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this one open and reseal it. And again, this is all you have to do when you get ready to cook it. I'm going to cut the whole thing off to make it easy to get out, but that was an issue with the liquid, I believe, because you can see right there the amount of liquid that's there. So I'm going to go ahead and take a paper towel on this one. There are some people that will put paper towels inside of their vacuum sealing bags to, you know, up near the top, just like make a strip of it, stick it in the bag, and then vacuum seal it because it keeps the liquid down below. But I would rather just get a container, because they have containers that you can use with the port here. This accessory port comes out with a tube that you can hook into, and most vacuum sealers will have something similar to that. And you can get containers like the Gladware containers that have a vacuum port on the top. I would rather use one of those for liquid stuff, just simply because I think it's a better solution. So I'm going to go ahead and just dab this. Just take the excess moisture off the outside of it so that we don't have this a repeat. And I guess I probably should have cut one more of the bags, but I'll go ahead and move this over here. Seal this up. Guess that is there. Because it looked like it had a good seal across, but you can get those little thin lines where the liquid is going out through too fast for the plastic to seal, to block it off. So yep, looks good. Second attempt. Alright, so grab that chicken, put it down again, try not to touch the top because it can cause similar issues to the one I just had. It's on the outside. There's that. Make sure there's no wrinkles, or as few as possible. There's that. Vacuum seal. And you notice how it's pulling it all tight this time. A little bit of moisture coming out there, but it's not anywhere near the way it was last time. So much better. That one's a good tighter seal. And again, it just matters that you get it right before you put it in the freezer. Yep, those are all good still. So set that aside. Seal this one up. And this is pretty much all there is left. I'm going to label these. You don't have to get super specific with the labeling. I'll just put down the month and the year with a Sharpie. Bang! So I'll just write that on it, like, you know, January of 2019. That way, if oh, it's stuck a little bit. I guess it's fine. So we'll find out. Should be fine. But again, open this up as wide as you can so that you can get this down without touching the side, and I still failed. See, that's right there is exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know if it's going to focus, but you can see it right there. Little bits of, get it on the black background, you can get little bits of that. If that happens, obviously you're going to have issues with it sealing, but you can grab a paper towel and just put it in there and wipe it up, and then it's fine. You know, if you ever have any kind of questioning whether or not something's clean enough to seal, just do that. Put that right inside the edge. Make sure it's in the vacuum seal portion. Close it up. Boom. And again, you don't have to hold this flat. I do it so it helps to make the bags a little bit less bunched up. Not a huge issue, but okay. Alright, where's the roll? I need to cut one more. And I'm going to put this piece on, because this is one of the ones that had a lot of moisture on the bottom. I'll set that on the paper towel. Slide you over. That's a small piece. That's the run of the litter. The scissors. Alright. That should be, yeah, plenty. We're going to go ahead and seal that up. And again, most of these vacuum sealers are going to work, you know, fairly similar. It's not going to be, you know, very complicated to. And just double checking something. That there should be all sealed. And again, I should have pushed down further on that when I released it. But close that up. Vacuum seal it. Alright. And another good sign is when you're releasing that, if you don't hear the pressure release from the vacuum chamber here, if it doesn't do the sound when you're opening it up, then chances are you didn't get a good seal. I'm going to go ahead and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I will cut 6 of these. Oh, almost got it. Drop the scissors. And again, we'll go 2 of these marks. And that way I don't have to measure everything out so much. This is the, these will be the bags for the, there, I didn't cut that very straight, but it's close enough. For the chicken. Since I'm laying it down and making it go with this way, or this way I should say, inside of the bags, you can get away with less. Each of these rolls, generally speaking, obviously come in different lengths, but most of them roughly run about 20 feet per roll, so it's not as big a, no. So that's good. So this is 4, I believe. 5. One more. There you go. There's that. Okay. We'll just set the stack over here. I can move this up and out of the way because there's no more chicken on it. And 1 of 6. And this is the teriyaki. And another way that you want to label them is just to make sure that, you know, if you're going through different flavors, not every flavor is going to be obvious on the outside, such as what kind of, you know, seasoning you put on it, things like that. So, you know, if you do, some of them are going to be obvious. Like if you're putting like a honey mustard sauce on something and then the other one's teriyaki, it's going to be more obvious than, you know, just putting some seasoning on. And one of them has, you know, turmeric or whatever on it, and the other one has curry or something. So just make sure that the seal is good. Grab the tongs, get the this is the one I tested. There's that. Apparently my son's looking at cake online. Alright, and again, just make sure that this is as flat as possible. And this is one of those things where you want to make sure you give yourself enough distance. I probably cut it a little close here, but you want to make sure that the opening is all the way. The more you give yourself as far as, and I'll flip it over, maybe this will help, is distance between whatever you're vacuum sealing. Generally they say a 2-inch overhang. But actually, you know what? I'm going to go this way, because it'll curl down into the chamber and it helps it lay flat. These ones may be more of an issue with sealing. I may want to put these on paper towels. Because, you know, you can see there that some of that liquid get up above the seal line. So I'm going to set this one over here. It doesn't feel like it made a super tight seal. I'm going to set this one over here just to check it and make sure that there's not a get as much moisture off the surface as you can. You know, makes things easier later on. I could go to the moist setting, but I want to experiment with it when I have a chance, not try to do it while I'm in the middle of preparing a bunch of chicken for the week. And give me just a moment. All right. I'll let him know that there. Yeah. See? And that's why you don't do things distractedly, because I'd already sealed this end and I almost just wasted a bag. Again, not the end of the world, but just a stupid mistake. So, I'm going to go ahead and put that in, drop it down to the bottom. Make sure there's nothing there, and there isn't. Make sure that that's smooth. There's much less. There's a little tiny bit right there that got up through. This is just moisture that's up above it. This one still seems like it's well sealed, so I'll just set the other ones up above, just so that I know to keep an eye on that one. And again, it's more of one of those things where if you try to cut corners and use less material and get away with using less, sometimes it can cause issues. There's no limit. Like if you go with a longer pre-cut bag and you're only using half of it, it's not that it's not going to work, because it will still work fine. It's more an issue of making sure that the contents don't leak up. And again, I'm gonna put this piece on a paper towel to absorb some of that excess moisture that the vacuum sealer is going to try to grab out of it. Yeah. And this is more of an issue with these ones than the other, because this is taken more freshly out of the... And let's grab that piece there. Use that to get a little bit of chicken off that. And again, this is the heating element contact patch, this piece of rubber. So you want to make sure that that right there, that strip, is as smooth as possible, because that's where you can get the wrinkles. And just make sure that this is inside of the vacuum chamber. Close it up. Vacuum seal. And you can see the moisture as the plastic comes in contact with it. And if you could see this over here, it didn't look like it had any moisture on it at all. But as you seal it, it pulls some up. Even then, there was just a a slight amount that made it up past the sealing line. And the burgers that I made them in December, so it was at least 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think I did it must have been after Christmas, so probably about 2 weeks ago. And when I microwaved them, you know, just given that, again, that small vent hole in the corner, and you microwave them for, just put it in for a minute or two, depending on how hot you want it. I put it in for roughly 2 minutes, and I think part of the reason why that's getting warm in the center is that I probably should be giving this more time to cool down between sealing exercises here. So we're going to do a better job of dabbing the moisture out of this one. Alright. There's that. And again, just try to make sure, open up big and wide up top so that you can push the chicken down in further without it touching the sides of the bag, because it can interfere with the sealing. And again, this is probably one I cut too short for this piece of chicken, but this is the smallest piece of chicken, so could potentially become an issue in a second here when I get to these larger pieces. But we'll see. We will see. Worst case scenario, you cut another 6 to 8 inches of... Yeah, there's a lot of liquid that come up out of there. I don't trust that seal. But we will see. We'll give it a minute. And yeah, so I'm going to try and get these as close to the edge as I can, just to give us more space in the bag. Seal that up. You know, and again, I'll check these all before I put them in the freezer, because you can always reseal them again before you put them in the freezer. Then once they're frozen, you're kind of defeating the purpose if you open it up of vacuum sealing it in the first place. So move that over there, and I'll set that in that tray and just get some fresh paper towels. And again, this is just to make it seal a little better. Probably should have given myself more room here, but especially on this piece. Or these last two pieces, I should say. And also, it keeps the likelihood of wrinkles down if you go deeper into the bag. If you give yourself more room to close up. Let's look at this first one again. Yeah, it's still pretty good seal. Like sometimes it's such a small amount that of air escape that it needs that it doesn't take a whole lot. Those are still fine. So last one. And I'll generally do these. The reason I do this on the weekend a lot is because it's easier to justify taking, you know, an hour to cook a large amount of food that you can then have for the whole week than it is to try to do it during the week. Because, you know, if you miss sleep during the week, it tends to just kind of snowball for the rest of the week. But on the, you know, if you do it around, you know, Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, it's generally not a big deal. So I'll let that cool off for a second. And the last piece of chicken. Then I get to clean up for the game. Alright. Let's open that up. It's the last piece. Get it down to slow. This one seems to be a little bit better. Boom. Alright, I'm going to set that there. Close this up. Plug it. Move it out of the way. And then I'm just going to label them. Alright. And before you label them, obviously just check to make sure that the seal's still good. That there's not, you know, air pockets in the... So I'm going to go ahead and just write right on here. We'll go 1. I'm not going to use the bottom, that pre-printed section here. I'm just going to say 119 garlic powder. That ought to be enough to know. You can see. Maybe 119 garlic powder. And just label the rest of these the same way. Yeah, because that's good. Alright. And so this is another example of, with a little bit of planning ahead of time, you can actually make food that is home cooked on, you know, and eat it during the week for people that actually work, that don't have somebody that, you know, if you're in a relationship and one of you, you know, works part-time or is, you know, a stay-at-home caregiver, that, you know, if the only person, like I'm a single father, so obviously I don't always have time to make a huge meal or the energy to do it during the week, but this is a way to kind of cut down and almost kind of game the system as far as the scheduling is concerned, where you can, you know, pre-cook a bunch of food, and then it saves time during the week when you're going to be exhausted. So you're kind of trading in some of your free time on the weekend a little bit, like an hour or so, but you get it back during the week when you're really, you know, short-handed as far as what you have time for. Yeah. Teriyaki, probably could have just used the tea, but there's that. Better to not have any doubts as to what it is. Boom. So, in roughly, how long have we been streaming? I don't know, a little while. Made all this chicken, which again, not exactly, you know, feeding a football team, but with it's just me and my son, this will go quite a ways. I'm just setting this out because I'm going to take a picture of it for Instagram and for the thumbnail, because we always got to have a thumbnail for after the fact. Yeah, we'll slide this back out of the frame. Clean that up in a minute. We'll just take pictures and then we can mess with it later. Move the little, I don't even know what that is, dust ball or whatever, fuzz ball. There. Cool. Now I just need to put these in the freezer, and we'll be good to go. So, again, each one of these is individually a serving. And when you get the pre-cut breasts, these are roughly, 4 to 6 ounces each. So that's generally what you would consider a serving of chicken. These are going to last in the freezer for a year, up to a year. They won't last that long, but they can last that long. And my son likes teriyaki. Sometimes he'll just want a regular chicken breast. And again, these are great during the week. In the middle of the week, you just feel like having a home-cooked meal, but you don't have time to make a home-cooked meal. This is a great way to just, pop something out, microwave it for a minute or two, and, dump it onto a plate, and you're good to go. So I'm interested to see how this will pan out over time, as far as how long this chicken lasts, how it tastes, a month down the road being vacuum sealed. I know chicken really doesn't taste great frozen, and with the ice crusted stuff and everything, a month or two down the road, but I think this will do much better. It's definitely worth this roll. I bought one roll 8 inches wide by 20 feet long again, and it was like $8, and I've barely dented it just making all this, so it lasts a fair amount of time. Again, the sealer runs roughly $40 on Amazon. It's Geryon. They have a couple of different models. Obviously, you can scroll back through and look at the one I have, the images of it, and match it up. I think it was like $44. And whatever electric grill. I think everybody should have a George Foreman grill or something similar at this point. But it's definitely, definitely useful in your kitchen. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of the burger that I had frozen a while back, just to show you. And again, this has been, 2 weeks or whatever. They're pre-cooked. They're frozen, you can see. 12/18 was when I froze it. This white stuff is the actual fat from the burger. They were just cooked. You can look back on my Instagram, Lorenz Chef, all one word, and show what it looked like when I had immediately cooked them. They just look like normal burgers. But when you seal it in, and these are going to do the same thing, when you freeze it, the juices and the fat and everything, they turn white and solidify. And it might look gross right now, but after you pop this in the microwave, it comes out like a juicy burger. So, and the chicken will be similar. And that's what's good about vacuum sealing, is it doesn't dry out. It doesn't, turn into, a dry, disgusting mess. So I'm going to go ahead and put everything in the freezer. And I want to thank everybody for watching along. Definitely, if you like this video, like it below with the thumbs up button. Feel free to go ahead and get subscribed. I try to do this at least once a week, but there'll be more videos coming out. Also, and obviously if you don't want to sit on the schedule, just click that bell icon next to the subscription button, and you'll get a notification when I do go live or post a new video. I'm going to be doing product reviews and things like that, and just having some fun with it. Not a big, serious production. I think everybody can see that now, but definitely a lot of fun, and hopefully somebody learned something. So, thanks everybody for watching.